Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture and happy Thanksgiving. It's a day away in the United States, but you know what? Even if you're not American, why not celebrate Thanksgiving? Dude, you get family, you got your friends, you feast a little bit, you have a good time, and you're just thankful for all the good things in your life. It doesn't have to be just relegated to Americans on this day or on tomorrow. Everybody can join in. Now, it is a big holiday, though, in the United States. It's up there as national holidays go, with obviously Christmas, with the 4th of July, with Easter, New Year's. It's one of the biggies. And as a result, it's obviously showed up an awful lot in TV series through the decades. And so I thought maybe it'd be fun to do a quick video with some of my favorite Thanksgiving episodes through the decades. I'm going to actually choose one episode per decade to go over, with a runner-up as well. Just some ideas on why these are some fun ones for me. I'm not saying they're the best that were ever made. They're just some of my favorites. And maybe you got a little extra time over the weekend. You're in the mood. Check these out. So let's start off with the 1950s. And I know the first thing people are going to say, but this isn't from the 1950s, because this episode appeared November 17th in 1960. However, I don't want to have to get all nerdy on you here. 1960 is the last year of the 1950s, because you see, we didn't begin in 0 AD. We begin in 1 AD. So the first decade is 1 to 10. Therefore, 51 to 60. So, My Three Sons, Season 1, Episode 8. Episode is called Chip's Harvest. If you've only ever seen the later My Three Sons, you're sort of missing out. It changed. It became a much calmer show over the years. The early seasons, it was frenetic. It was the kids all running around and yelling, and they're trying to get things going. And this one is no different. We're like the day before Thanksgiving, and the Douglases are supposed to have people over, and their stove breaks down. And they're trying to find somebody who can fix this stove. I guess maybe it goes under a day of. They're still trying to find somebody to fix it. Steve is going all over the place looking. Now, each of these kids gets to invite somebody to Thanksgiving dinner. And Chip, the little one, wants to invite his friend, Johnny Squanto. Now, Johnny Squanto is a Native American, but his brothers don't believe that's true. They think he's just this bum who lives in a shack down by the railroad. And Chip's been hanging around with this guy, which makes Mike a little nervous too. Like, okay, who is this dude? He goes down to see the guy and is going to sort of disinvite him. But he sees how happy he is to be invited, and he relents. So day of, everybody's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Johnny Squanto shows up. He isn't able to fix the stove, but he has a different way to cook the turkey. So what he does, he digs like a fire pit and, fills it with leaves and this and that, and wraps up the turkey, puts it in. And the other boys are like, oh my God, he's burying our turkey. They're being real jerks. And Chip is really angry about it, and Mike is like, or not Mike, I'm sorry, Stephen Douglas. He's really shocked at his son's behavior. And this is like the classic My Three Sons. It's a great show if you're a new dad trying to figure out what it means to be a father. Because Stephen Douglas he knows how to work it. And he's very upset with them. And then while they're all, arguing over this, because Johnny Squanto has left, and Chip is like, they made him leave because they were so insulting and yada, yada, yada. And Johnny Squanto returns in full regalia. He is, in fact, a native chief. And he had not spoken earlier because he couldn't find his false teeth. So now he's speaking, and with a great voice, and telling them of the story of his people and all. And so it's a very heartwarming episode. Chip is vindicated. The two older boys kind of realize they have really been jerks this whole time. Good episode. It's an episode with heart. And you do need those once in a while. My runner-up for the 1950s, from November 22nd, 1951, so about a decade earlier, Burns and Allen, Thanksgiving. Look, it's a typical Burns and Allen with Gracie getting everything wrong, driving everybody crazy. If you've never watched Burns and Allen, they hold up. They hold up beautifully. First season's a little bit rough. I think it found its stride a little bit later, but great shows, extremely funny. So let's move into the 60s. Beverly Hillbillies, Season 2, Episode 10, Turkey Day, from November 27th, 1963. Again, kind of a typical Beverly Hillbillies episode where there's a lot of misunderstandings involved, and a lot of these have to do with the clash of cultures, not just rural versus urban or down home versus Beverly Hills sophisticated, but also old-fashioned, versus the new way of doing things. The earlier seasons of Beverly Hillbillies are really very impressive. Mr. Drysdale wasn't quite the caricature that he becomes later, which is pretty funny, but he's a little more solid and a little bit more on the side of the Clampetts, not just because of the money. He has some affection for them, while his wife hates them, and of course she's involved in this too. And we get Ellie, makes friends with the turkey, so she doesn't want to kill the turkey, and we have these two actors who have been hired to play Native Americans for a photo shoot with Mr. and Mrs. Drysdale, and one of the guys is Jewish. What I really love, though, is, and this is, I think, what makes Beverly Hillbillies such a great show early on, is the wit and wisdom of Jed Clampett. Maybe the only wise person really on the show. Miss Hathaway, perhaps, too. Ultimately, Granny thinks that the Indians are on the warpath, so the two actors end up hogtied in the kitchen while she's waiting for the men to get home with guns. Of course, Jed comes in and he's like, "Oh man, what's going on here?" He unties these guys, and then Miss Drysdale shows up, and you get Jed going, "Okay, I think there's a whole lot of misunderstandings going on here. Why don't we all sit down to dinner and sort all this out?" And again, it gets to the meaning of Thanksgiving. And coming at the time of year in 2024 that this one's coming, we know there's a lot of misunderstandings now in some families and among friends. Maybe do as Jed Clampett says. Why don't you sit down and try to get some of this stuff sorted out? Try to forgive one another a little bit. Might be good for your soul and for your sanity. So it's another one. It's a lot of comedy in this one, and it is very funny, as the Beverly Hillbillies usually were, especially in the earlier seasons. But again, also a little bit of heart, which I think that's important for a Thanksgiving episode. My runner-up, Samantha's Thanksgiving to Remember, from November 23rd, 1967, season 4 episode, where Aunt Clara accidentally, I sound like Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara accidentally sends everybody back to the first Thanksgiving, or one of the early ones in 1620, because she just wanted to go back and visit friends. So she brought everybody with her. I love Aunt Clara. One of the things I love best about Bewitched is just it is the relatives. I love Endora, who's, obviously she's pretty fierce, but there's some good in her too. The parade of her relatives are a lot of fun, and Aunt Clara is probably my favorite among them. And that's why this one ranks as high as it does for me. Okay. 1970s. Look, there's only one choice for the greatest Thanksgiving episode of the 1970s. WKRP in Cincinnati. Season 1, Think about that. First season, episode 7, Turkeys Away, October 30th, 1978. So you could argue it's not a Thanksgiving episode, but it's a Thanksgiving episode. I honestly think this might be one of the funniest episodes of television ever written, period. Hilarious. It's got interesting angles. The timing, especially at the end, the timing of As God Is My Witness, I Thought Turkeys Could Fly, is freaking astounding. And for a first season show, for a first season episode, that they got it all together for this thing. It's one of those things where you're going like, nobody else on earth was ever going to do this episode but these folks who were working on WKRP in Cincinnati. To me, it's one of the essential shows of the 1970s, early 80s, probably along with Barney Miller, Hill Street Blues, shows that just were a notch above. And if you haven't watched a lot of TV from that period, or even if you have, but you haven't been there for a while, and you have an interest in like TV and the making of, watch those series. They're well worth it. But this thing is, we watch it every year. I think we actually bought it on like Amazon or something. So we'd always have it handy to watch when Thanksgiving rolls around. It's just so great. The runner-up, and by God, it's a close runner-up, of course, is the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special, premiered November 20th, 1973. I would have been a year and a half at the time, but I grew up with this thing. And it was one of those shows, just like the Charlie Brown Christmas. You waited for this all year long, and it was on one day at a certain time. If you missed it till next year. It was a big deal. But it's a great one. Has some great moments in it. Snoopy fighting with the chair. Of course, as kids, we just all thought the Thanksgiving feast of jelly beans and popcorn and toast was like, dude, I can make that. That's awesome. So it's great. And, granted, I put WKRP in front of it, but I mean, it's probably really a tie when you get down to it. In the 1980s, and one of the great shows of the 1980s, Newhart, Bob Newhart's second series. This is Thanksgiving for the Memories, November 24th, 1986. Fifth season episode 8 from season 5. So the overall story in this one is that the Vanderkellens, which Stephanie Vanderkellen is the rich girl who is working as a maid in the inn of Dick Loudon. I'm trying to remember exactly why. The first season, it was her sister, and then it was her. At any rate, she's going home for Thanksgiving with her rich parents and bringing, Dick and Joanna along with her. And Dick is just like having this awesome time because they have this mansion. It's got everything. This is the greatest thing he's ever seen in his life. This is going to be the greatest Thanksgiving of his life. And it turns out some old toy of Stephanie's got thrown out or donated, and they try to replace it with a lookalike, and she finds out and she gets PO'd and she storms out and takes Dick and Joanna with her, and Michael, of course. And so Thanksgiving, they end up, they have like no food, nothing in the inn because they weren't planning to be there. So they end up next door at the Minuteman Cafe, run by Larry, Daryl, and his other brother, Daryl. And, eating in the cafe is it's a little iffy, but they got a whole Thanksgiving feast. And of course, Stephanie's parents end up showing up as well to sort of make up with her. What really makes it for me is this line at the end. They start to eat, and I think one of them is like, the gravy's really good or something like that. And it's like made with gopher or something, and all of them are just sort of like I don't want to eat this. And Stephanie's dad, played by the great Mel Ferrer, played Cyrano de Bergerac, and one of the most important movies in my life ever. It was a huge change on my life, but I love this dude. He utters this line that I just love, and I think a lot of us need to maybe keep in mind. He says, "Oh, who cares? You know, good is good. Let's just eat." Okay, the pretense is dropped, and they eat, and they have this happy Thanksgiving with Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. Great series, great episode, well worth a watch. My runner-up for the 80s is the classic Cheers episode, November 27th, 1986. So 3 days after that Newhart episode, in fact. Thanksgiving orphans. They all end up at Carla's house for Thanksgiving. It gets tense, and we get an absolutely knockdown, drag-out food fight. A great one. You know, Thanksgiving, sometimes it's family. For some people, it's friends, but, you know, who cares? And if you can get a good food fight in, it's all worthwhile. So to the 90s. Well, speaking of Cheers, my favorite 90s Thanksgiving episode is from Frasier, season 4, episode 7, a Lilith Thanksgiving. Dude, anytime you get Lilith in the mix, I'm down because I love that character. November 26, 1996. So solid 10 years after that Cheers episode. So they have these plans for a rustic Thanksgiving, but they are called off because there is a chance to get little Freddie into the, I think it was the Marlboro Academy, Marbury Academy. And, you know, the East Coast, it's all about where did you go to school? And it's that kind of stuff. So, you know, snobby Frasier and Lilith, they got to get him into the school. So they rush off back to Boston, and they're trying to get him into this school. And of course, everything's going wrong, and those two are making it worse. And there's lying, and one lie piles on another. It's just a really funny episode. There's no particular heart. There's no lessons in this one whatsoever. It's just funny. Frasier was so well written. An amazingly written show. The lines that they crafted for this thing are unbelievable. And this is as good a representative of that as any. My runner-up for the 1990s Thanksgiving episodes to watch. Friends. Look, I know a lot of people trash it nowadays. Dude, it was a good show. It was. Most of us were watching it. This one is also from 96, November 21st. So 5 days before that Frasier episode. And this is the one where they end up in the, pickup football game. A lot of funny little bits in this one. Friends did a Thanksgiving episode like every year, which is why you have people nowadays who celebrate Friendsgiving because they don't have family in town or whatever. So all the friends get together and have a feast, which is an awesome thing. If you don't have family, find some friends, or hell, go anywhere, go somewhere, have something to eat with people around, chat with the waiter, waitress, get some good vibes in your life. And so I asked my daughter, who's at this point probably a bigger fan of Friends than I am, I go, what's the best one? She said that's her favorite. So that's the one I went with. They had a few good Thanksgiving episodes. So there you have it, folks. Thanksgiving episodes through the decades. My choices for the ones that I like the best, and maybe you'll enjoy them too. Maybe you got some that you like even better. I'd love to hear that in the comments, what you have to say about that. If you enjoyed this little video, this little walk down memory lane, my little recommendations, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like. Think about maybe subscribing, maybe sharing with a friend. But until next time, God bless everybody. And especially at this time of year, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun. I hope you have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And don't forget, with all the food, with the football, with the arguing about politics, don't argue about politics. Don't argue about politics. Politics are not as important as your family and friends, and they never will be. When life gets rough, those politicians are not going to be there for you. Get PO'd at your friends or your family, fine, but love them anyways. But in all of that, don't forget to truly count your blessings. Count your blessings. Think about all the things going right in your life. Think about how things could have gone a lot worse. Think about folks out there who are struggling with things that you're not struggling with, and maybe say a little prayer for them. Make it a really special Thanksgiving. I hope you have fun, and I will hopefully see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.